loves, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Emily and I am just so glad that you are here today. We are going to be talking about some spring books, and I am just so excited that spring is approaching and arriving, and I thought that it was time for, well, it's the first official day of spring. I intended to have this filmed and edited and ready to just upload this morning, but life got away from me, as it has a what's the word I'm thinking of? As it tends to do these days. Last year on the first day of spring was like when I posted my original 10 cozy wholesome books to read for spring video, was sort of my re-emergence onto BookTube, and I have so enjoyed the last year of making book videos and talking about books, and it has just been such fun. So this feels a little bit like a channel birthday. So if you've been following me since that first spring books video, thank you so much for following along, liking, subscribing, commenting, all of that. I know I've been a little bit inconsistent, especially since my baby was born 6-7 months ago, but yeah, I so appreciate you being here. And if this is the first video of mine that you're clicking on, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. I am just so excited to tell you about cozy wholesome books. So I have like 10 to 12 books here that I want to talk about, and before I dive into it, two quick things to note. One, I have my baby monitor on so I can hear the kids if they wake up, so if you happen to hear any sort of like faint music sounds coming through, I do apologize, but I need to be able to hear my baby, so. And the other thing is, spring books are surprisingly challenging to find. The majority of books I feel like are set in summertime, or they're like really cozy, like autumnal, fall time, like wintertime books, and it's really hard to find books that are specifically like only occurring in spring, and that's probably because spring is one of the shortest seasons, at least where I live. And so it's very rare to find a book that's going to happen like in just a month or two. They typically span a broader span of time. And so what I have looked for in these books is books that talk a lot about nature or animals, or I have like a fairy tale retelling in here. So just really like nature-y themed books, or books with not necessarily nature themed, but with lots of nature descriptions, and there are going to be books on here that you probably wouldn't hear anybody else recommend as far as spring books, but I thought that they were appropriate. I have picked some books that are from some of my favorite authors that aren't necessarily spring, but were the most spring-like books that I could think of from those authors, and yeah. That's about all I have to say as far as an introduction, so let's dive into here so I can try and get this filmed and edited and uploaded today. The first book that I wanted to talk about is one that I actually just recently finished rereading, and it is from one of my all-time favorite authors, and that is one of my beloved Louis L'Amour books. This is that right? Wait, okay. Jubal Sackett by Louis L'Amour, and this is the 4th book, I believe, in the Sackett series by Louis L'Amour, and it's one of his chunkier books. I picked this one in particular because it's all about Jubal Sackett, who is traveling from, I guess I should say, it's set in the 1600s, I believe. I'm trying to remember now. I believe it's in the 1600s, and so it's like early, like America has just been discovered. It's starting to be, people from England are starting to travel over, and, oh, what's the word I'm thinking of? They're starting to settle in America, and Barnabas Sackett, who is the father of the Sackett family, he's the first one that comes over to America, has come over and he's had some children, and he and his wife have had some children, and they have settled in America, and they've made friends with some of the Indians in the area, and then in the previous books, Barnabas Sackett has died, and this is about one of his sons. So Jubal Sackett is his, like, 3rd son, I think, and he has gone traveling off further inland in North America to find a another place for the family to move to as more people come over from England and other countries and whatnot. That he's going to find other places further inland, and so that he sets off on this like epic adventure of traveling across America, and he is asked by a Indian elder to find the Indian maiden from this tribe who has traveled further off into the country to the mountains and whatnot to find a new place of new home for her tribe. And so he is trying to go and find her, but then there's also this evil Indian who is determined to have her for his bride so that he can gain prestige in the tribe. And it's just lovely. The nature descriptions and everything, it's not quite Western because it's like pre-Western, and Jubal is just traveling through America and going through the different, traveling in canoes along the rivers, and they're having to fight off the warring Indian tribes and hunting for meat to try and survive, and it's just lovely. It's so good, and there's a lot of Jubal is a very contemplative man, and a lot of the things that he sits there and thinks about, and the way that there are so many quotes from here that I absolutely love. It's just amazing. And like I said, it is a bit of a chunky book. It kind of starts in the springtime, but then of course it travels throughout. There's a winter time because they're having to hunt for meat and stuff because they don't want to starve, but it's cold, and it's lovely. There's a little bit of a romance in here as well, which I appreciate about a lot of Louis L'Amour's books, is that many of them have some element of romance. And I love the way that Louis L'Amour writes about women. His women characters are just amazing. So highly, highly, highly recommend this book and any of Louis L'Amour's other books. But specifically for spring, this is the one I picked. Okay, the next one is another one of my all-time favorite books, and it's also one of my favorite movies, and that is Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones. And if you have seen the Studio Ghibli adaptation of this book, Howl's Moving Castle, it is an excellent movie. It's an animated movie, and I have seen it many times. If you haven't seen it, I also highly recommend that as some spring movie viewing. It's quite different from the book. Very, very different. The basic story outline is the same. So this follows Sophie, who is one of 3 sisters, and she has believed... I'm just going to read the back of the book because I'm really not that great at describing books. I'm trying to work on that. I'm trying to work on summarizing them better, but I'm just going to read the back of the book. So it says, Sophie has the great misfortune of being the eldest of 3 daughters, destined to fail miserably should she ever leave home to seek her fate. But when she unwittingly attracts the ire of the Witch of the Waste, Sophie finds herself under a horrid spell that transforms her into an old lady. Her only chance at breaking it lies in the ever-moving castle in the hills, the wizard Howl's castle. To untangle the enchantment, Sophie must handle the heartless Howl, strike a bargain with the fire demon, and meet the Witch of the Waste head-on. Along the way, she discovers that there's far more to Howl and herself than first meets the eye. It's amazing. It's so good. Again, it kind of talks about different countryside things. It's sort of fairy tale-esque. There's magic and obviously spells and enchantments and a little bit of romance, and it's so good. I think I've read this book twice. It's been a while since I've read it, and I think I need to reread it. But yes, I highly recommend both the book and the movie. They're amazing. The artwork in the Studio Ghibli movie is phenomenal. I have actually a screenshot from the movie. It has been my computer background for the last 5 or 6 years because it's just gorgeous. I'll see actually if I can find it and pop it up here, just an example, but that's kind of the mood of this book to me, so definitely give it a read if you haven't. The next one is one of my childhood favorites. This one was sort of one where I was really desperately trying to think of other spring books and I couldn't, and so I just picked this one. But it does have to do with animals, and that was part of my criteria, and that's King of the Wind by Marguerite Henry. And this is the story of the Godolphin Arabian, and what is it? Sham. Sham is this little boy. He's a mute horse boy, who is taking care of his horse, and he travels along with his horse, who he has called Agba, and he takes care of him after his mother dies. So again, I'm explaining this terribly, but it starts off with Sham, who's this horse boy who cannot speak, and he is taking care of horses in the stable for the king of the Sultan, the Sultan. And there's this one mare who has a baby, and then she ends up dying, but the baby manages to survive, and that's Agba, is what he's called it. And he takes care of him. He feeds him and gives him milk and stuff to help the horse like survive. And then it says, the Sultan has called for 6 of the best horses in the kingdom to be given to the King of France. Agba, the mute horse boy, just knew that his horse Sham would be chosen. Sham was the king of the wind. But neither Agba nor Sham knew what was in store for them. When a corrupt boat captain steals the food for their journey, the horses nearly die by the time they arrive in France. And the King of France sends Sham to be a workhorse for the palace cook. Agba is heartbroken. Is this Sham's fate? Will he ever be able to prove himself the champion that he is? Oh, excuse me, I swapped it around. Agba is the little boy and Sham is the horse. Anyway, it has been years since I've read this because I didn't actually own a copy until just recently I managed to pick it up, and I am so thrilled to have this in my library again because, again, I need to reread this one. It is one that I have read many times, and growing up my mom had this really beautiful edition of it. It was like this bigger like hardback red copy with just like the horse head on it. So beautiful. I would love to get a proper hardback edition of it, but for now I'll stick with my paperback because that's the only one I have at the moment. Highly, highly, highly recommend it. Like I love this book so much. Like they go on all these adventures because they're in France, and then I think they end up traveling to England, and it's just amazing. It's so good. Please read it if you like horses. And again, for middle grade March, which is a read-along thing that's happening right now that I really don't know anything about, but I just know that it's a thing, this is an excellent pick for that. And then, alright, basically all of these books on this list are in my favorites. Also, I've noticed that the light has changed. Let me adjust this. There we go. But this is another one of my favorite books that I have read many times, and it's a pretty quick read, and it is The Inheritance by Louisa May Alcott. This is my edition, and this is as far as I know, this is the very first novel that Louisa May Alcott ever wrote. She wrote it when she was about 17. And it's this sweet story about Edith Adeline, who was a poor, penniless Italian orphan who was adopted by this rich Englishman. I can't remember, what's the last name? Hamilton. Lord Hamilton. He happens to adopt her and brought her back to England to live with his family as a companion for his daughter. And it's kind of the story of, and this one may be kind of more summertime-y. I can't remember exactly when it starts. I'm realizing I need to pay a little bit more attention to like what month of the year things occur in, but it's got a lot of like nature scenes, and it's a very sweet, wholesome romance. The writing of it might not be for everybody because it is very much that older style writing. If you've never heard of it, there is a series called Elsie Dinsmore by Martha Finley. It's a similar type of writing to that, where it's like Edith is very much like this perfect heroine. Like she's really innocent and blameless and beautiful and sweet and kind, and there's sort of like the villainous cousin who is trying to like smear Edith's reputation, and there's a lord that comes to visit who was in love once, and then he has vowed never to love again, and it's just, I love it so much. But again, the writing might not be for everybody, but it is a very quick read. It's very sweet, very wholesome, and I love it so much. And I will also say another movie recommendation for you. There is a adaptation of this that's called The Inheritance. it's the movie, and I think it was just a made-for-TV movie. I will say, it is absolutely nothing like the book. So if you've read and loved the book but haven't watched the movie, do not go into the movie expecting it to be anything remotely like the book. They basically took like names and that was about it. Like everything else about it is completely different. But I really love the movie as well. So if you kind of view them as two completely different stories with similarities, that's how I would go into it. Highly recommend that one as well. It's really sweet. There's like horse riding and stuff, and like the hairstyles are all completely off for the time period, and it's a little silly because of how historically inaccurate it is, but it's a really sweet, wholesome romance, and I've watched it more times than I can count. And realizing that I was going to be talking about this book, I was like, it's about time to rewatch that movie. It has a really great soundtrack as well, so highly recommend both of those. Then the next book in the series is another one of my childhood favorites that I just had to pick up. I had to find a secondhand copy of it maybe a couple years ago now, and that is Constance, A Story of Early Plymouth by Patricia Clapp. And it is written in diary format, which I love. And it's a story of Constance who traveled over, I believe, on the Mayflower, or one of the ships around that time. And she's living in a early colony, and it kind of talks about their life then. There's like sickness and having to take care of their family, and there's like a romance in there, and it's really good. It's so nice. Like there's different descriptions of like wintertime and then springtime, and actually I can tell you it starts in November. It starts in November and then goes throughout, I think it's like 2 or 3 years. Let me see. See, it starts in 1620 and it ends in February of 1626. It's very sweet, very lovely. There are some hard bits in it because this is like the early American settlers, where they were dealing with starvation and things of that nature. So there is some of that in here, but by and large, it's a very sweet, lovely book. Like I said, it's got some romance in it, and I have read this so many times. It was one of those books that I had read when I was a child, and then I couldn't remember exactly what it was called, but I would think about it off and on, like periodically every like year or so, and then I was just like, what is that book? And so I found it, and I've reread it again and again, and I love it so much. So there's that one. And then this one is actually one that I just read for the first time last year, and I think I need to reread it, and that is The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. This one is so good. Like this one has a lot of like nature descriptions and stuff, and like descriptions of gardens and flowers, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. I need to reread it because I feel like I was kind of not in the right brain space because I was dealing with some issues with my pregnancy at the time, and so it was just a lot of stress that I was going through, and so I don't feel like I really properly appreciated it. So I would really, really love to reread this one this year. But it is talking about, again, I'll just read the back to you. High above a bay on the Italian Riviera, the small medieval castle of San Salvatore was awash with the scent of flowers, its olive groves sweeping in terraced descent down to the sun-warmed sea. San Salvatore invited the heart to burst into blossom. Mrs. Wilkins and Mrs. Arbuthnot are glad to leave their stifling duties and distant husbands behind. Mrs. Fisher wants only to sit in the sun and savor her youthful memories, while Lady Caroline Dester longs for the sweet oblivion of no adoring suitors. They agree to rent the castle for a month of blissful privacy, yet amid the showers of fragrant wisteria and the hazy heat and sensuous silence, each one will be seduced and changed by the magic of San Salvatore. It's really lovely. I was really scared going into this. This was going to be one of those books that was like really supporting a woman like leaving her husband and like abandoning her family and all that. And it's not. It's very sweet, very wholesome. There is elements of romance, and it's so beautiful. It's so cozy, and like, again, the descriptions of like the gardens and the flowers and the place, the castle that they're staying in, it's amazing. And I have heard, I believe some people have commented on my previous videos, that the movie adaptation is really good. I haven't personally watched it yet, but maybe I'll try and give that one a watch this year. We'll see. I don't watch very many movies anymore. I just don't have a lot of time. But highly, highly recommend this. Like I said, I need to give it a reread, but it's so good. Okay, we're getting to the spot where I don't actually have physical books for the rest of them. This one I'm going to recommend is like a two-parter. So I have the second book, which is The Singing Tree by Seridy. The Good Master is the first one and is the one that I'm actually recommending, although I recommend both of them. The first one, The Good Master, is about, I looked this up, Yangtze? I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but it's a young boy, and he's living with his mother and his father, and they end up having his cousin Kate come to stay with them. And there's all sorts of stories of like the adventures that he and his cousin get into, and it's talking about like, it's set around, I know Easter time is around the time at the beginning of the book, because it's talking about like decorating Easter eggs and all the traditions that they have. I think it might be Hungarian. I'm not 100% sure, but it's got a lot of the descriptions of the very, yes, it is Hungarian because it says Hungary, but it has the descriptions of like the traditional celebrations that they do around Easter, and he and his cousin go horse riding, and they go and help the shepherds with the sheep and the lambs, and they hear stories from them, and it's just so cozy and so amazing. And I haven't read it in years, and I've been wanting to reread it, but it's a little bit harder to get your hands on because I'm pretty sure it's out of print. So maybe look on Abe Books or Thrift Books or other online secondhand book places. I was able to pick this copy up from one of my favorite secondhand book store things. It's a Instagram page where there's a lovely lady who sells books secondhand, and I was able to get this one, and so now I need to get the first one so that then I can have both of them, because then this one is at the beginning of World War I? I can't remember exactly if it's World War I or World War II, but then his father ends up having to go to war, and then he's like missing in action, and oh, it's really good. It has a happy ending. So, highly recommend both of these. They're excellent books. The writing is amazing. I love them so much. Okay, so that is all the physical books that I have. So now we're going to talk about a couple books that I do not have the physical copies of. And I knew I had to pick a book both by D.E. Stevenson and by Betty Neels because those are my two newest favorite authors. So the book by D.E. Stevenson that I recommend is Music in the Hills. It is technically the second book in the, is it called the Daring Family series? Victoria Cottage is the first one, but I realized that one is more of a summer book because it starts in like June, July timeframe. Music in the Hills is carrying on from Victoria Cottage, and it's about James, who goes up to stay with his uncle Jock and Mamie. Mamie is like one of my all-time favorite fictional characters now, on their Scottish farm, and he's going to learn how to be a farmer from his uncle. And his uncle is hoping that he can teach James how to, I'm second guessing that it's James, but I'm like 95% sure that it's James, but now I'm like, maybe it's not James. Anyway, his uncle is hoping that he can teach him how to run a farm, and then hopefully have James as his heir, the heir to his farmland. And so it's lots of descriptions of Scottish countryside, and there's like small village life in there and farm life, and talking about shepherds, and there's a bit where there's people are stealing sheep, I think is what's happening, and it's just the descriptions of like Mamie's cottage and all of that, like it's just so good. And I'm planning to reread the whole series this year because I absolutely loved it. And the series is Victoria Cottage, Music in the Hills, and then the third book has 2 titles. I think the American title is Winter and Rough Weather, but the original title is Shoulder the Sky. Excellent books, the whole series of them, but specifically Music in the Hills is my recommendation for a spring read. And then the Betty Neels book that I picked is actually one that I just finished reading yesterday, and it's called An Innocent Bride. And it talks about Katrina, who is a girl who is living in a small English village with her aunt. And the book starts off where she has gotten in an accident because a person driving a motorcycle was very careless and knocked Katrina down when she was riding her bike. And of course, it cut me off. So, as I was saying, of course, the handsome, rich doctor is the one that is driving his car and sees her in the middle of the road with her bicycle ruined, her groceries scattered everywhere, and he picks her up and takes care of her and bandages her wounds and takes her back to her cottage. And her cottage is called Rose Cottage. And I picked this one specifically, 1, because I just finished reading it, and 2, because it has a lot of descriptions of like gardens, and it talks about flowers a bunch, and it talks about her cottage, and it's just really, really lovely. It's a classic Betty Neels book. Very much fits the trope of all the rest of them. But it's a really sweet, wholesome romance. And there is, it ends up that Katrina has a woman and her daughter who's very sick come to stay with her, or her daughter was sick. She's recovering from, I think it's a form of cancer, because that's what the doctor specializes in, is to do with cancer. And so she has this woman and her daughter come to stay with her, and like they get to come and stay in the country instead of living in the gloomy London slums. And so they come to stay with her at one point, and it's just classic Betty Neels. It's excellent. I really enjoyed it. And then let me see here. So we've done that one, and we've done that one. So then, technically I have 2 more to recommend. The last one I've been kind of going back and forth on, but I'll just go ahead and recommend it to you anyway. But before we get to that one, I wanted to recommend Rose Daughter by Robin McKinley. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Robin McKinley actually has 2 Beauty and the Beast retellings. The first one is just called Beauty, and then the other one is Rose Daughter. And Rose Daughter is way more focused on roses and gardening. And if you're not familiar with the story of Beauty and the Beast, it's the story of this merchant, and he has 3 daughters, and his business fails, and so he has to move out to the country, and they have to live very, very poorly. So they're living in this cottage that they happen to have forgotten that they owned. And so they're living out in the middle of the country, and it's kind of close to a little village. But in this particular book, Beauty, or I think her name is Honor, like her official name is Honor, but I can't remember now because I think it's Honor. I know Grace is one of the sisters. The hard part that I'm running into is I can't remember exactly which sisters belong to which book. Because there are 2 Beauty and the Beast retellings. But anyway, Beauty, we'll just call her that for sake of simplicity, really, really loves gardening. And so they get to this cottage, and she's like really trying to get the garden up and running again so that they can have food to eat and to sell. And then of course the merchant hears that there may have been a ship that made it through, and so he may actually have a little bit more money, so he travels back to the city, and it doesn't go as well as he expected. So he's coming back home, and he gets lost in the middle of this woods, and then he ends up at this magical castle where like they're taking care of him and everything. And as he is leaving the castle, he picks 1 rose to give to Beauty because that was what she had requested as a gift. And as he does that, like this horrible, terrifying beast appears, and he says, "How could you rob from me? You have to come back and stay with me, or it's either send your youngest daughter to stay with me, or I think it's come back and you have to stay," or something. I don't remember exactly. Anyway, so the merchant gets back to the house, and of course they're all just like, "Oh no, this is such a tragedy on top of everything else. Like, now we have to deal with this evil beast." And so then Beauty, of course, travels back to the castle to save her father. And when she gets there, in this particular adaptation, she finds like this greenhouse of roses, and they're all like dead and dying and sickly, and so she's trying to like figure out how to get them to come back to life. And so there's lots and lots of talking about flowers and roses, and it's fairy tale retelling, what's not to love. It's one of my favorite books. It has a little bit of a twist ending that I personally really loved. My sisters didn't enjoy it as much, but I really loved it. So overall, excellent book. If you like fairy tale retellings, please read it. And the last book was one that I was kind of going back and forth on. I wanted to recommend like at least one book from all of like my favorite genres, and one of my favorite genres is Golden Age murder mysteries. And so I thought I would recommend a particular book in the Detective Roderick Allen series by Ngaio Marsh. And so the one that I have picked, I forgot to listen to how this is pronounced again. Surfeit? It's like I know how to say it, but as soon as I start trying to say it, it messes me up. But I think it's Surfeit of Lampreys, and this is really one of my favorite books in the whole series. I love it so much because it's about this like family, and they're all kind of a little bit eccentric and like crazy and just really fun, and they're the Lampreys, and it starts where it talks about oh, what's the main girl's name? Oh no. The family's in New Zealand, and our main girl, I'm gonna have to look her name up, but the family's in New Zealand. That's where they start. Give me just a second. Let me see if I can find it quickly. I looked up and it's Surfeit. That's how you pronounce it. Surfeit of Lampreys. And it's Roberta is the main girl's name. And she meets the Lamprey family, and there's a bajillion of them. There's like 6 kids or something, and she meets them when they all live in New Zealand, and they are constantly having issues with money. Like they'll have money, but then they spend it on everything, and then they don't have money anymore. But they're this really kind and like generous family, so it's not like they're just like wasting it all. It's just they just use it. Well, they end up having to move back to England, and then Roberta is living with her parents, and I think what ends up happening is her mom and dad end up dying, and so that's why she travels to England, because she's going to go live with her aunt. I think that's what happens. But then she stays to visit the Lampreys, and then of course murder occurs, and Detective Roderick Allen appears upon the scene to solve said murder. And it is so fun, and like as much as a murder mystery can be, like the family is fun. Like they're just chaotic is the way that their family is. Like they're so funny, and it just cracks me up. Like there's these twin boys, and at one point they're like pretending they won't tell which one of them saw what happened, and so they're like lying about it, and it's just really funny. And then yeah, there's like descriptions, and it talks about like New Zealand and some of the New Zealand countryside and stuff. But yeah, so it's a little bit, it's not quite as springy as the rest of the book, so that's why I was kind of going back and forth, but it's one of my favorites. I've read it at least 2 times so far, and I'm sure I will read it again in the future, because it's just excellent. So that is all the books that I have to share with you today. Thank you so much for following along and listening to me ramble about them. I hope that you enjoyed the video and found some new books to add to your TBR. Again, I would love to know if you have any like all-time favorite spring books or spring books that you are currently reading. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will be back soon. I have a little book haul to share with you. So I will see you on the next one. Bye.